I, Napoleon Bonaparte, will build up an army that can take back the French motherland in only 100 days. If you're a man or a woman of honor, then like the video. It all started when I woke up on the island Elba after I lost the battle near Waterloo. They thought to banish me here, but Napoleon Bonaparte won't be stopped by anyone. Determined, I got myself the basic tools to survive in this Mediterranean jungle. I needed to cross over to the Italian peninsula as fast as possible. That notion was confirmed when I stumbled onto native savages armed with spears that controlled ape-like beasts. I was not equipped to either fight or negotiate with them, so I fled and discovered this cavern on accident. When I attempted to secretly escape with the help of vines, a sentry spotted me, shot me, and I died. I didn't have any inclinations to stumble upon more of the natives in the night, so I made myself a bed and slept. On day 2 of the banishment, I found the remains of the ship that had brought me here. It contained seeds and other useful tools. Hundreds of undead sprang an ambush on me while I was looting, but my superior swimming skills were enough to escape the trap. On day 3, I spotted a pirate hideout and decided to rob the scoundrels of some of their loot. When I saw that they had hired some of the savage natives to guard their safe house, I quickly packed up my things and left as fast as I could. For the rest of this day and the next day, I fought my way through the jungle until I found the crossing over to Italy. The people there weren't very welcoming. I did invade their entire country after all. When I had reached the border between France, Switzerland and Italy, I decided to settle down and gather a sufficient force to stage another coup d'etat. Without supplies, no army is brave, which meant that I needed to first establish a civilian-run base camp that would produce all the food, ammunition and building materials. On day 5, I bested a beast that had set up its lair nearby, and I then went underground to find precious resources. On day 6, I crafted basic iron equipment and an engineering table that would allow me to manage the equipment and supplies of my army. As I couldn't depend on researchers to invent better blueprints, I needed to research everything myself. And that requires paper and more precious metals. I managed to get my hands on sugarcane the same day and descended down into the dark maw of an underground cave system the next day to find the precious metals. I found a lot of iron, gold, emeralds, an enchanted golden apple, but most importantly, 6 food rations. Those would allow me to attract and recruit French citizens. I nearly died at the hands of monsters when I emerged from the cave, but luckily lived to see the next day. On day 8, I crafted the research station. I needed to unlock knowledge of more buildings. I also got myself a full set of armor, as I didn't want to get that close to death again. On day 9, I started training 3 French citizens that would be the initial backbone of the army encampment. I also placed down the command center, which I named La République Française. While I was out hunting spiders for my research, I found this Italian border outpost. While the archers were focused on the monsters, I attacked them, but was run down by their cavalry. Although I may lose a fight, I never lose a war. When their cavalry was eventually severely wounded by the monsters and had to retreat, I stole all their equipment. I was eventually driven off, but I had won the war. Now I only needed sugarcane to be able to build a farmstead. But before I did that, I tamed this hunting dog and named him Oscar. The next day, I set out with my boat to find the sugarcane. And during my exploration, I found this altar. A peek inside revealed mountains of gold, gems and other chests. All those riches would jumpstart the might of my army. There were lizard men guarding the cave, but I used a nearby lava source to flood the cave with molten stone. That worked quite well, until I accidentally fell into the lava. I spent the next day trying to get my stuff back and failing painfully each time. On day 13, I decided to stop the half-hearted attempts, and I equipped myself with new armor, weapons, and an enchanted golden apple. That did the trick, and I finally killed off the entire lizardman population. I spent the rest of the day collecting all the iron, gold, emeralds, diamonds, and gold coins. On day 14, I placed down the first farm and employed my first camp follower, David, to work the land. I spent day 15 researching and luring a cow into this animal-friendly enclosure. The farmer, David, would also get a spacious room to protect him from the monsters during the night. My dog, Oscar, handled himself quite well during the customary monster hunt for string. And together, we slew one monster after another. When Oscar got low on health, I told him to sit down and wait. Yet when he thought that I was in danger, he disobeyed my orders and jumped into the fray. He never stood a chance against the zombie, but he attacked anyway. Without regard to my health, I slaughtered all the mobs that came into my way. Only the light of dawn pulled me out of my craze. I approached the Swiss town of Bern, knowing full well that the Swiss would just write me down. To my surprise, they greeted me and even invited me in. I tried to provoke them by insulting them. "Hello, my German friends." But they only laughed it off and offered me chocolate. The sugar refueled my determination. I captured 2 additional cows and, on day 18, put down a mine and employed a miner. The next day, I increased the bounds of the wheat farm and gathered materials. I went mining and found diamonds and a spider spawner. Because the research needed a massive amount of string, the spawner was a godsend. On day 20, I finally unlocked the animal farm and the tree farm, which would provide a constant stream of building materials and food. I also instructed my farmer, David, to work both the wheat and the meat farm. On day 22, I went fishing to unlock the fisherman's hut and to cool down a bit. I gave the miner diamond tools and increased the area he could mine in. As the farmer, David, wasn't producing enough wheat to sustain our population, I had to gather more food the next day. It might have something to do with him running between the meat and the wheat station half the time. With part of the food I had gathered, I crafted food packs to train more citizens. I also gathered obsidian with a new diamond pickaxe and fought cave spiders. The next day wasn't one of my brightest days. I was running low on gold and it's one of the main ingredients in training new citizens. And I thought to mine gold in the nether and even used my last valuable gold I had left to craft golden boots so I wouldn't get attacked by piglins. Oh frick, I'm playing on 1.12. I left the dimension disheartened, only to be attacked by an Italian elite squad. And after being well into the construction of a spider farm, I realized that none of the later research needed string. And when I came back to my village, everyone was dead. I luckily still had a food pack left over to employ a priest, who then could resurrect everyone. The next day, I made the best decision of my life. I finally crafted a fish farm. Because we were low on food, I also built a stone enclosure for the priest, so he couldn't get food when he got hungry. I told him that he should just take this as extended fasting. On day 29, I placed cobblestone stairs all over the hill because the fisherman said that the slope was too steep. I also got another farm to hopefully increase our wheat output. And finally, I set out once again to get enough food to feed all my workers. I hoped that the citizens would be less hungry if they were content. So I decided to give in to their demands and free the priest from his imprisonment. I also placed down beds, which was well received. Okay. There were complaints about the positioning, but I need them to, you know, make me lots of... I also cleared out land for a second farm and went back underground to mine for the next 2 days. I found diamonds, a zombie spawner, but most importantly, this skeleton spawner. The bone meal should combat the food shortage in the short term. When I confronted Gabriel, the fisherman, about the amount of fish he had caught, to be exact, 0, he told me that he was too embarrassed to admit that he didn't know how to use a fishing rod. Instead, he usually fishes with a hoe. I thought that he was joking, but when he showed me how efficient he was with a hoe, I let him do his own thing. The next day I placed down a second mine and made the lumberjack a miner. I can't constantly run around and do menial tasks like deliver food. I'm the commander after all. So I built a warehouse and drafted a courier, Allard, to deliver all the items automatically. Because food was already running dangerously low, I imprisoned the priest Baptiste once again to save on food. I had already killed most of the animals in my area, so all I could do was enchant my gear and get some bone meal. Remember how I said that employing the fisherman was the best idea of my life? When I went down to check up on the result of the fisherman's hoe fishing the next day and saw all the loot he had amassed, I realized, all that fish is probably enough to feed this camp for 2 weeks. And Mother Teresa! Those are some strong enchantments. I immediately upgraded the fisherman's hut. I needed food rations to hire more fishermen, and so I went out to gather meat. During the hunt, I got attacked by cannons from this pirate island, but I couldn't do anything for now. I then tore down the second farm and built 2 new fishermen's huts. And most of the 5 days were spent actually teaching Allard, the courier, when, where and how much he should take. That imbecile would randomly start dancing or making out with one of my fishermen. And after days of tedious work, the courier will now fetch, deliver items and cook food, I guess. To finish off the military base, I built this aesthetically pleasing fisherman's house. In the end, only one of the fishers actually wanted to live in it. I have no clue why. This colony is now self-sustaining, which means that we can now put all of our focus on outwards expansion. We didn't have any other choice, as the Italians would soon come to pay us a visit if they found out that I had started a military camp in their territory. In the west, pirates block the sea route. In the north, Switzerland is blocking our supply chain and our army from advancing into France. My army would need a lot of swords and armor, so I went cave diving once again. Only this time I got blown up by a creeper. Because the farmer was a vegan, he hadn't killed any cows in the meantime. And they even had started climbing over each other to escape the small pen. Yeah, I took care of that problem. I wasn't able to find my body, so I had to start mining all over again. When I came back, everyone, apart from the fishermen that had taken residence in the home I had built, had died. I have to admit that I was gloating about that fact. Not that they died, but that the fishermen survived. Yeah. Although I could and did simply resummon them with a priest, it wouldn't have been that easy if it had been a real attack. That's why I hired 4 warriors to protect the village. For the rest of the day I trained basic maneuvers with my new troops. The literally most painful part of it all was the fact that they constantly shot me in the back. That was unacceptable behavior. I promptly picked up the worst offender and let him drown to death, which decreased the frequency of being shot in the back to 0. I also built a barracks where each soldier would have to smell the other soldier's feet. To finish off my streak of building, I created this magnificent building as the army center. I should have pursued the career of an architect after all. When this dog caught my eye, I decided that I had let the wounds heal for long enough. I named him Ekil. Definitely don't read that name backwards. I trained with my soldiers for a good chunk of the night, until we had something that barely resembled a fighting unit. On day 54, I set up a patrol route for the guards and went mining for the next 2 days. When I resurfaced again, the only thing I was going to need in the foreseeable future were food packs. I had enough of all ingredients except for chicken breasts. I had already feared that I had eradicated the chicken population, but I was able to find 2 chickens. I also found this parrot. I named him Leshpot because he has an unnerving inclination of imitating creepers. And on the following day, I got back to where I had hidden the chicken with the intention of leading them back to the camp. That's when it happened. Those were my chicken, and I was the only one who was allowed to kill them. It really showed me how petty the pirates were. I wasn't yet strong enough to confront the pirates directly, but that would soon change when I found that the fishermen had found a true treasure trove of weapons. What especially caught my eye was a Power 5, Flame and Infinity bow. And after enhancing the bow with Unbreaking and Punch, it was truly worth of its name. La Droiture. The first thing I did was go to the nearby Italian border outpost and kill the knight that had run me down. If the opponents had no shields, they would fall like wheat in the wind. On day 59, I went to the jungle, took out a border outpost and one of the native villages. As expected, the loot was abysmal, and the only item of value was this anvil. I also paid back the pirates by killing 4 of their members with my new bow. Finally, I successfully brought 1 chicken back. Now it only needed to lay an egg that would hatch. That couldn't take long, right? While I was waiting, I founded the 2nd Battalion, the main force of my future army. On day 62, I had to break up a protest when the soldiers demanded individual tens. A speech about how we were going to reconquer the motherland did the trick. On my quest for chicken meat, I stumbled across a bandit outpost, but most importantly, this ruin inhabited by giants. There were still remnants of the old sprawling town remaining. I left but ensured the natives that I would come back. Not out of the kindness of my heart, but because the treasury might be still untouched. On day 64, I once again marveled at all the enchanted books the fishermen had found and used some of them. Finally, I decided to just start running in one direction until I had half a stack of chicken breast. Only on day 68 did I find a chicken near a French military encampment. It hurt to fight people from my own country, but chicken takes priority. I stole one of the men's horses and fled the scene. Only when I saw the glorious gates of Paris in front of me did I realize how far I had traveled. As soon as I was inside, I was bombarded by catapults. My horse was gone the next day, but I didn't really care as I found more chicken in a nearby meadow. An ambush by some bandits actually came at an ideal time as I was able to steal the horse of the bandit leader. And with my new steed, I also made the French soldiers look like fools as I evaded their strikes, shots and bombardments, all the while stealing the town's supplies of chicken. Because my horse had shown no signs of distress during the entire fight, I gave him the name Le Grand Cul. When the eggs the chicken had laid until then didn't yield any baby chicken, I gave the chicken incentives to increase egg production. I also crafted all the food packs I could for the rest of the day. The next day I went about cooking the massive amount of fish that the camp had amassed since my departure. On day 72 I placed down and equipped all my future soldiers. The force would consist out of a few tanky commanders, 4 medics, and the rest of my army would use all the overpowered bows my fishermen had found. I finished equipping the troops the next day and went to scout out the first target, the horse-riding Italians. Deployment of the troops went smoothly, and I gave the last battle speech. Men, we are the French Legion. Although you are stupid, please don't be as stupid as to shoot your own people. I'll let you guess what happened. At first, we successfully stormed the camp and caught the enemy by surprise. Whenever someone would peek out of the tent, he would be shot down before he could blink. The only problem my army had was that, just as I'd feared, my men couldn't handle the fire arrows. All of our casualties came from soldiers with fire arrows setting their comrades aflame. In the turmoil of battle, someone actually shot me in the back. Lucky for the soldiers, the adrenaline rush of beating a dangerous foe wiped away my anger. The loot of the Italians was amazing. All the food rations they had distributed among their men would certainly fuel the growth of my army. The next day I re-equipped the fallen soldiers, sorted the loot and exchanged the flame bows with normal bows. Encouraged by my last victory, I went to the last Italian town left standing. To my surprise, they were quite weak and I killed them with my bow La Droiture easily. I still needed to sharpen up and toughen the troops, so I decided to fight the giants trapped in the castle. I deployed all the troops and gave the customary speech. Okay man, the giants are trapped in the castle. All you have to do is shoot them from afar. Now, attack! I was close to losing hope in humanity at that point. At least they weren't setting each other on fire. But everyone had been smushed into a pulp. Luckily, I had a priest with me who constantly revived all the soldiers. My soldiers would now run towards the gate, pick up a bow one of their dead comrades had dropped, die, revive, and the cycle continues. It took them half a day to figure out that they could just shoot them from afar. The battle dragged on for the next day, but we were slowly getting into something that resembled a formation. Finally, the last giant fell as my soldiers swarmed around him like ants. The next day, a creeper destroyed our military base, which meant that we couldn't revive 3 archers, but I didn't care. My eyes were focused on the treasury. And I wasn't disappointed. Not only did I find a diamond chestplate and a diamond halberd, but also this totem of undying from a survivor still guarding the treasury. When I asked for a reward from the townsfolk, they said that they didn't have enough food to feed their own children. Lousy excuse. Day 79 was spent bringing all the troops back in fighting order. I also rewarded the first soldiers that had thought of shooting from afar. As always, there were of course soldiers that tried taking some of the treasury's riches for themselves. On day 80, I crafted everyone in my colony a shield. I also got more hunting dogs, as Ekil must have been quite lonely with me always being on campaign. The next day, I expanded the warehouse and the chicken finally laid an egg that hatched. And I freed it from its torture. I also built this beautiful staircase to a platform with an enchanting table and my bed. Now my citizens could always look up to their ruler. Like, literally. Although on second thought, the staircase wasn't one of my master strokes. On day 83, I decided to pay the pirates on the island a visit. Not only to get their gold, but mostly for their cannon technology. If I wanted to capture the Swiss castle, I needed firepower. The loot on the pirate island was nice. But I was unable to steal the stationary cannons, only destroy them. And the pirate ship nearby didn't even have cannons. So, we need a replacement. Actually, you couldn't call it a replacement, because it's 10 times more cooler. A giant trebuchet! So I spent day 86 researching the theory of gravity, ballistics and advanced siege warfare. I needed more precious materials for the construction of the trebuchet, so I went back down into the mineshaft to gather more materials. I finished the necessary research on day 87, but had to go mining again when I realized how truly massive the trebuchet was going to be. I finally was able to craft the trebuchet, but I now needed ammo, the materials for which I gathered on day 89. I crafted myself diamond armor with full protection 5 enchants from the books the fisherman had found. I had to farm skeletons for a while to get enough levels. On day 92, the true preparations of war begun. I had no experience piloting a trebuchet and so thought that the rumor that they shoot stones as far as 300 meters was a myth. I instead set up a totally inconspicuous platform 100 meters away from the Swiss castle. I had to ensure the Swiss emissaries multiple times that there was nothing fishy going on. Even when I placed down this beauty of a beast, they still didn't make a move. When I did some test shots, I finally realized that the trebuchet really shot that far. I spent the next 2 days practicing the trebuchet controls while building this military encampment. The Swiss people were slowly getting nervous with all the 45 kilogram stones impacting only meters away from their castle. I needed to act soon. Finally, the day of the battle had come. With the protective wall I had set up, the enemies couldn't see that I deployed troops. Only when I actually started bombarding their castle with the trebuchet did the alarm bells ring. The knights protecting the base of the castle were quickly overwhelmed. Only the archers at the top kept raining down arrows. My initial plan had been to bring the tower down with the trebuchet. But despite me hitting and breaking off a sizable chunk of the tower, it was somehow left floating. Now the only way forward was to storm the tower and potentially get ambushed. Together with my most trusted officers, I did exactly that. I initially wanted to leave the princess alive, but an officer of mine killed her in cold blood. Finally, we arrived at the top of the tower, where the Swiss prince was making his last stand. He did manage to keep me suppressed for a while, but he eventually fell to the tide of my men. We had won a battle, but not the war, at least not yet. That's why I took the last days to frantically research, gather materials and troops. And after days of hard work, I have finally gathered a fleet that can hold its own. Paris, I'm coming for you. A big thank you for all your support on the first episode in this historically styled 100-day series. If you haven't seen the first video, then check it out. And if you've already seen it, then you're a legend. And it would be sick if you press that like button. Peace.